The Redline Narratives podcast is your go-to for understanding how Boston's infrastructure plans impact all of us. We discuss everything from zoning to community planning, complicated engineering terms, ties to historical redlining and urban renewal, and even the cultural implications of development. It's all about making sense of complex topics and ensuring that you have an informed voice in these changes. We'll be having special guests, city officials, experts, you name it, in order to help us answer the questions so we can make positive changes in our community. So let's lock in and hit these streets. Welcome to the Redline Narrative Podcast. Welcome, everyone. It's the Redline Narratives Podcast. I'm your host, Engineer Marlon Solomon. So happy to have you on here today. Today, we're going to be talking about development without displacement, zoning, gerrymandering, a little bit about the Squares and Streets initiative that's going on in the city of Boston. I'm very excited to get started today. So let's dive right in. So, this first podcast, I'm actually very excited about it. Like, what can I say? I've been thinking about it for a long time. Here we go. But something really pushed me actually to get this started earlier than I anticipated. So it's really about Roslindale Square and a petition that I found that was sent over to me. So I'm really excited about, using this, trying to create a platform to help this very important issue, which was actually the petition is actually put together by the Roslindale Coalition of Boston. You can find it on change.org. That's the QR code. Check it out. When I made this slideshow they had earlier today, they had about 25 signatures. Let's get that up for them, please. And I'm going to tell you why. All right. So let's go right in. So Roslindale Square, as you guys know, not too far from me. I don't live there. I live in Hyde Park. There's and Roslindale Square, along with multiple different parts, communities, and neighborhoods in Boston, are now going to be subject to the Squares and Streets rezoning plan, which has been brought by the city. The idea behind this is that there's a housing crisis. We really need to do what we can do to increase housing and increase development, activate our city centers, make them more busy, better for business, better for all Bostonians. This is actually fantastic news, and we're really excited about this. But a lot of times, development, pardon me, comes with displacement. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we go into deeper, let's see what exactly is Squares and Streets. You've probably seen a lot of these advertising on the buses and maybe even the bus stops, what have you. And you're probably wondering yourself, what is it? What is it all about? It's just it's a city plan, right? That gives about 6 options, right? They name it S1, S2, S3, S4. Anyway, let's not get into the technical jargon, but the idea behind it is that there are different levels, heights, building heights, and different things that they allow in those different areas, right? Like some places may not have ground floor businesses. Some places may be able to go up to 5 floors or 7 floors. And all these things are extremely because they're going to affect the lives of many of us. The Squares and Streets plan is normally characterized by a 1/3 mile radius circle, as you can see here in this diagram that's gotten from their website. You can see that this plan is about a 1/3 mile and it's all the way around. And this is the area that they're planning to do the developments, probably with the higher buildings in the center, But if you look at there now, if you look at Roslindale Square now, maybe it's got like maybe like 3 floors. I'm not certain. I don't know what they've actually planned for this zone, but it could go up to 5 or 7, right? And then it kind of tapers, like, kind of like a mountain, at the top, and kind of tapers out towards the area. So it's part of like transition zones, yada yada yada. Let me not go into too much of that. But like I said, this is going to change a lot, as you can imagine, right? The cultural demographics, the economic landscape, right, and the quality of life, right, for our communities. So it's extremely important that we start to understand what's going on, right? The city has been engaging in a lot of these informationals and community sessions to try and get community input, but I find that this information is largely very siloed, meaning that they speak in engineering speak, or they give us software that's too advanced for just even engineers like me, let alone other people. So it is important to that we do information sessions like this. If you were part of Hyde Park's community, we've done, along with community partners, Community Input Board of Hyde Park, Southwest Boston CDC, to name a few, and we've had to even build in real models and or create diagrams with drone footage in order to communicate. So this is something that I think that the city of Boston needs to work on, because a lot of the communities that underserved multicultural communities do not know what's going on with squares and streets. And more importantly, why that is important that they do know is that this development, no matter what anybody tells you, it's going to cause displacement of mostly low income, underserved, multicultural communities in Boston is going to be, and it's going to be widespread. This is very actually similar to the redlining and urban renewal, where different parts of the city were displaced. So how it works? Well, you have a place like Roslindale Square, it's doing fine. But guess what? We want to make it better. We have a housing crisis. We need to put people in buildings. We need to build affordable homes. We need to build spaces. But the problem is that when you start doing this, you increase the property values of the surrounding areas and invariably make it more expensive for the people that live there to live there. So if you're just, like most of us out here in these streets of Boston, trying to just keep up with the bills, keep up with the rent, something like this, you need to know. This is going to happen gradually over the next, decade or so. But in the end of the day, people are going to be displaced, and people need to know they're going to be displaced so that we can, what's going to happen to these communities, what's going to happen to these people wherever they go. So this is what I'm concerned with, right? That's why we have information like this, right? So I talked to you a little bit about this. This was taken from their reception packet, the Squares and Street reception packet, and it kind of gives you a little color code, a little pretty, marketing to show us what is going to happen in certain areas. We have the community core over here. We have existing street connectors over here. And then we have gateways, sorry, potential gateways, which I don't know why these are potential gateways, because these roads have been established for many, many years. The trolley line used to go right down Cummings, down to Hyde Park and Mattapan Square through this. So I don't know why it's potential, but nonetheless, that's what it is. And then these yellow areas are what they call deeper community connections. I guess that just means a bit farther out from this in this 1/3 mile radius. But one of the things that it actually also means that these areas around here, especially, we'll be going into more detail. These areas are the areas that have the low income multicultural communities that I'm so interested in protecting. So, what is around the core and the commercial core? They're going to be doing a mixture of small and medium scale commercial uses with residential spaces, particularly above storefronts. So housing above, stores, and they're going to be trying to make the place look great with street trees and seating and other kinds of connections and just other things to boost the activity in the area. That's one of the terms they use. Activate streets. So they really want to do that. And it's a great idea, and I think that they definitely need to do it. In fact, one of the things that I really like about what they're trying to do, they're going to make it so that this Washington Street is just basically straightforward, or at least they're getting the information to see if that's what they want to do. And this is actually revert back to former planning. So back in the days, you used to be able to just drive right along Washington Street and not go around go around Belgrade and all this and go down here, right? You can just go drive. So they're thinking about that, but that's going to require some changes, right? Um, then, Washington Street, North and South, which I think is very important that we discuss because there's a lot of first generation BIPOC businesses in this location. And definitely BIPOC residential in this area right here. But basically, they are trying to make active connection between Adams Park and Healy Field, and that's what they'll be working on. All right. So now let's dig a little deeper, right? So I heard specifically that they're recommending that this area right here, right above the park, right here, was going to be targeted for redevelopment. First of all, it's not in the original plan. As you can see here, I've superimposed this area on where it represents on the squares and streets map. It's for clarity. And you can see that it's definitely like a little itty bitty piece right here is like, in the line, but for the most part, it's out of the area, right? Um, this area is 80% of the residents are approximately 80% of the residents are African American, Black, and Latino, while 20% are white. And like I said, this is a low income area in Roslindale, right? So I'm going to talk a little term here. It's called zoning gerrymandering. I use the term to try and make it so that it's easy for people to understand. We all understand what gerrymandering is, how maps are used politically to like break up districts or bring districts together to serve the purposes of particular ethnic groups or demographics and not others, which is basically the premise of redlining and urban renewal of the past. And a lot of this, because these underlying infrastructure has not been much changed since these days, the characteristics and the effects of the design is still present today, right? So when you think about how it affects us economically, it increases property values, it ensures that people that live in a place may not be able to afford to live in a place in the future. Culturally, it affects just even the makeup and the of the area, and ensures that like the certain businesses may not be aligned with the market of the community, right? So let's say it's one community that likes a certain brand of food or a certain kind of activity. If the infrastructure, if you zone it differently, that community won't have things to do or not be able to do a lot of the stuff that they normally do. Socially, this is also this really affects us in multiple ways, but just it really kind of means that how we what kind of services do we have access to, what kind of infrastructure is in our community, and how does that affect us interacting within our community, right? And then of course we all know the political disenfranchisement part, but and this has to do with voices being heard, right? So you definitely want a situation where you have all the voices being heard. But if some voices are lumped in with more powerful voices, as we'll see coming up shortly, those voices can be definitely silenced. So let's dig into this zoning gerrymandering a little bit easier, right? A little bit deeper. So this is the area of concern with the low income multicultural communities that like I said, that I serve. And you can see that, and this is a picture that's taken from justicemap.org, and it kind of gives us locations that have been sectioned off, and each of these colors represent how much money people make in those areas. So if you see this dark blue over here, 115,000 average and more. You get here, it's a little, it's like in the 83, 93. You get over here so you can see what's going on. And then my Hyde Park. Well, we're over here with our brothers in the underserved multicultural communities over here, right? So the area that we're talking about, and this is the park, we can identify the park right being here. So this area has actually been lumped into an area with a higher demographic, right? So Marlon, how do you know that this is a multicultural low-income community? We'll get into that. But I want to first talk about why this area has probably been selected for for this kind of development, as well as why it's kind of sectioned off with people with that are making more money, probably down in this area over here. And that is this part. The number one rule of real estate is location, location, location. So when you're selecting locations for development, you're going to be looking for places that are that have a lot of add value spaces that you will look good on an advertising for an apartment. So imagine you're looking for an apartment and you see a place that says 5 minutes from the T, great green space, only 5 minutes away. That's the most likely reason why this place is in this section. But and it's lumped in with a lot of people, and that's why this area, regardless of who lives there, is kind of probably being selected. Now, this is very similar to redlining and urban renewal, where, like, you have a city center, it's doing well, and you now want to increase and make it look better. But what happens is the people that couldn't afford to live very close, but could afford to live by, now that you want to expand this opportunity, you're also expanding this circle kind of in a way and making it so that the area of influence around Adams Park is going to now make it so that all the pricing around here is also expensive and more valuable. Because if I said, hey, there's an apartment right here, and it's only a little walk, 10-minute walk from 10-minute walk from Roslindale Square, you'd be like, oh, that's a great place to live. So all these things play into why this place is going to be selected for environment. Like I said, because this area is in the green zone, they won't have a voice because their voice will be probably lumped in with everybody in this group in this area, and that's kind of how zoning, redlining, gerrymandering works. Pardon me. So I said, "Wow, man, I can't get this data because it's all lumped in with everybody else, right?" But I said, maybe there is some data, but first of all, before I go to that data, let me see what's going on in this orange area, which is between 40 and 56,000. I looked there and I saw that you had 47,300 is the income for the people living in this area, and they have a non-white population of about 80% and a white population of about 19.9. Remember those numbers, because those are the numbers we're going to be using moving forward. And that is just in this area right here. Okay. So when we go to the next slide, right? Oh, sorry. And this, as you can see, I've superimposed this area right here so we'll know exactly where we're looking at, right? When we go to the next slide, so this area right here, this census tract 11, this is from the former page. So this is this orange zone that I told you before, just to kind of make sure that we have our numbers here for comparison. This is the area of interest, right? That was lumped in under the green area. So I did a little deeper, and if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that this is the adjoining area. So this is just around here, right? Just in this area. And you can see the demographics, non-white 81.4, similar to our 80.1, and our white 18.6, similar to our 19.9. I did, and if you go down here, the story is the same. A little difference here in block 1001, where you have the 26.6 and 26.6 white people and non-white people. There are 73. Little disparity there, But nonetheless, if you go to the around the park and you can see the locations here, you go a little closer, it all pans out 84% non-white, 16% white. Here we have 80% white around the park and 19.7 right. Very close. So it is pretty safe to say that the community that we look at here is basically the same part of this community, and it's actually been sectioned off from its main community. This is important because it's important to try and keep these cultural hubs per se together, because they live the same life, have similar jobs, work, have the same concerns, needs. And when you break them up like that, it serves to disadvantage the group that's kind of like left away from the majority, right? We can all imagine that. It's not much to imagine, right? And that's really all that we have for today's tips. I hope you're enjoying it. But before I go, I do want to say that this work around displacement, around development, affects all of us in the city of Boston. And it's why it's extremely important that we do the hard work to ensure that our communities are being taken care of. There is no way to do this work without doing it together. And this Redline Narratives and the work that we're doing and the petition that I want you to sign on change.org is to let the government know, let the city government know that we have a voice and we would like our communities to be protected, and those that will be displaced, we want them to have a place to go. We do not want to be guilty of funding our own displacement because we're all taxpayers today. So reach out, do what you need to do, get involved in the squares and streets in your community. If you want to reach out to me, please do so. We have all our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. You got it. And you should reach out to me, and maybe we can do a workshop or something in your community. We'll be very interested. Please, if you want to support the Redline Narratives, please, there's a QR code there. Make a donation. We are a nonprofit organization, so any donations you provide will be tax deductible. We thank you for attending, for listening to this program. Please subscribe, follow us, share with your community. And once again, we want to be your voice, so make sure you're giving us feedback, and we look forward to talking to you next time on Redline Narratives with me, your host, Engineer Marlon Solomon. Have a great day.